So welcome back to Cross-Cultural Communications. Again, I'm Sean Watts. All of our information, we're following the class outline, CCC outline. And with that said, you should be aware that we are at the second last week. So we're going to be talking about written communications, differences in writing in different countries. It's appropriate because you guys need to hand in some projects soon. If not today, it's best if you guys don't wait until the last minute, because there are many students, several students may be wanting to present. Once they get up here, they may take longer time than they expect. And if you have not reserved details, you will run out of time and won't be able to present. So I have my presentations to talk about today, and I would also like to bring your attention to this. This is a file that you guys can all use. If not, you can use your own. It is an evaluation file. When you are communicating, there are a few things to note. Hopefully you are aware in the sign up and marks details here, this idea. So let me just make sure this is a little bit bigger so you can see it. So the main lesson in class is, number one, respect other people, respect other values, respect other ideas, and go beyond ethnocentric beliefs that your message is good and clear. Many people in the world probably have different understanding than you, different interpretations of intentions than you, different interpretations of words and meanings than you. So check whatever you're going to present, find out if the other person not only understands it, but if they have some suggestions to upgrade the meaning so it's understandable or better understandable to them. And that's the this last part here. Check your understanding and how your message can be clarified for the values of others. Your grades, as we see here, are listed here. Some people are doing quite well. Some people still need to catch up. And so you guys have an opportunity to present. You should be signing up for when you're going to present for the last day. You can sign up here or in Facebook. So I have gone through Facebook and I've seen that there's no new posts in our class file. There should be. Every one of you should post your presentation in Facebook. It's supposed to be a method with this online teaching that we're using for other people to interact with you and give you suggestions for improvement, especially because we're at the last part of the class. Any questions about that? Going once, going twice. Emin Gyu, how are you today? Emin Gyu, can you summarize what I just said? Emin Gyu is not in class today. Okay, I will make a note of that. What about Rosie? Can you summarize what I just said?
About posting our presentations on the Facebook page and presenting early so we don't all pile up in the last weeks.
And so your plan, Rosie, is?
To get it done as soon as possible.
Okay, even if it's not done, ideally, while you're developing it, it's best to share some details with close peers so you don't waste your time. While you're working on things, other people can see you with the best technology, Google Drive, and they can give you some suggestions. So maybe even if you're not finished, you can share some of this stuff. So thank you for clarifying those details. Let's
Professor?
Yes.
I just want to clarify one thing. Our last class is, you said that December 3rd, is it right?
We are now in week 13. Yes, So you only have next week left and then we're finished. There have been some holidays and times when classes have been skipped with the university, but our class already had those makeup classes. So you're correct.
So we don't have any class on second week of the December.
Correct.
Thank you.
We finish next week. That's the very last time to present details, get marks. Any questions? Is that clear to you, Min Jung Kim?
Yeah, yes.
I'd like to comment about that. I checked our school schedule, and it says until our the regular schedule, the last class is December 7th, and then rest is makeup classes until December 15th, I believe.
Okay, have you checked the KAC schedule? The KAC schedule says we have 14 weeks, and I can show it to you. This is week 14 since we've started.
So I mean, our date starts since Wednesday, so the last week will be December 3rd, Friday, and 7th, Tuesday. That's our last week schedule, I believe.
Well, that's possible to believe if you didn't pay attention to our class schedule, because we had makeup classes for that already. We have already had several makeup classes.
Oh, no, I mean, sir, the makeup class should run on December 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, no, 13th and 14th. You can check on school schedule.
I have checked. You're welcome to show me some alternative, but I've already checked. I've talked to the administration. They normally say classes continue. You're right. They normally have classes afterwards if no professors have made up classes already. But we've already had made up classes. We've already had the makeup classes. So it's including the very first week issues. So please check how many classes we've already had. Most of them are already recorded, so it should be pretty easy.
Oh, I mean, December 7th is not makeup class, it's a regular class schedule. That's what I'm saying.
Feel free to talk to me again. I'm repeating myself. Our last class, the last week, is next week. You're welcome to talk to the other students. If you want more classes as a group, feel free to talk to the students. I am happy to give more classes, but we have finished everything up until the first week of week 13 now. And next week will be the beginning, Tuesday is the beginning of week 14. So any other questions? Going once, twice, questions about your projects, questions about when you can present. I'm reminding you again, obviously, some people are focused on doing things later. You should not. Make sure you present today so you can get some marks, even if it's not finished. Some marks are better than no marks. And if you present today, you can still present again tomorrow, sorry, next class, if you sign up for it. So that is better than running at a time. In the past, some students
Professor,
run at a time. Yes.
Professor, I have a question. For our project, do we have to write like the whole information that we found, like an actual article, or can we just present a PPT for our results and all of that?
You have to, for our class requirements, it's only presenting a research project by PPT, but you must reference properly. And so you must have minimum of 17 reliable, respected research articles with in-text referencing on each slide and full referencing at the end of your PPT slides. If
It's 17 articles. Did I hear the number right?
Okay, you were asking how many articles you need to do. How about Arfin? Can you answer that? How many articles is the class requirement?
Professor, I'm not sure, but maybe 25, I think.
20, well, if you do 25, that's very good. You'll do very well. What about Kyungganjang? Can you?
It must be at least 10.
Correct. Yes. That has been written in class requirements, PPT, and it's in the class outline. So you only need to reference minimum 7, but 10 is better. It's optional. And that is not just any reference. What kind of reference are we talking about, Jung Min-jin?
Is Scopus article
Correct.
7-10?
Yes, thank you very much. So I hope that answers everybody's questions. Any other questions before we start recording? Going once? I can't see anybody's hand up, so you need to speak up. In this cross-cultural communications class, we are trying to teach especially Korean students how to, how to interact, to communicate with others, especially knowing that the Korean culture of being quiet and obedient is nice here, but for international communications, it's much better for you to be more aggressive, speak up. Hopefully that's good. Last questions going once. What about Kavanjani? I haven't heard from you yet today. Any questions from you, Kavanjani?
No, Professor, I'm good.
Okay. And Mukalisa? Any questions from you?
No, everything is clear and understandable.
Okay, great. Let's get on with it. So the idea of international English and especially written communications for cross-cultural communications, we're going to be talking about various things, especially how to write a basic letter, how to communicate with people of different cultures and backgrounds. Especially, I've heard from students that you're interested in how to communicate with resumes and job applications. So we'll talk about that today. The idea of writing tone and style we can discuss. Of course, the idea of electronic mail, and we'll talk quite a bit about the idea of how job details change depending on the country we're with. Overall, what % of outgoing international correspondence is said in English? This research shows 97% of outgoing international correspondence is sent in English. 1% is sent in French, German, and Spanish. If you'd like more details about that, there's lots of information here. Our class is following closely. I don't know, can you guys see this? Maria, can you see this? Might not be able to see it closely, but here is a textbook.
Yeah, we see it.
We've referenced quite a bit. This is the Intercultural Business Communication. Here is another book written by a friend in Canada about management across cultures. And it's talking about how business people communicate with people in different countries and how there are often mistakes and how to manage those. This book is similar, written by another Canadian, International Dimensions of Organizational Behavior. This book is very short, almost like a comic book and novel. It's showing many different really interesting examples of how people communicate, thinking things are okay in their mind, but they are huge problems and can destroy businesses with other cultural understandings. So pay attention to that. There's several books here and simple books about how to communicate to transfer from college into your career. All of these things are in my office if you wanted to talk about them. So there's lots of errors, there's lots of mistakes when people are communicating with people from other cultures. What we just showed was the idea of communicating, and it said so much communication is in a certain language. So now I'm going to ask you a pretty basic question just to see if you guys are paying attention. What is the best language? If you want to be successful internationally, like an international business person, what is the most important language in the world? Anybody?
English,
Next guess.
Chinese,
I heard English. Next, I heard Chinese. Next.
and
Spanish.
Russian.
Body
Russian,
language.
if you want to have a business in Central Asia.
I heard Russian. Next.
I said body language.
Body language. Okay, that's actually better at answering the question than all of those previous comments. The actual best language in the world for you to communicate internationally for international business is your customer's language. Whatever language your customer not only speaks, but understands and values, that's what you should be using. It's different than what we said here. This is just what a lot of people are using. It doesn't mean it is the best. The best is the language of your customer. Because so many people make cultural mistakes. So many people will say something because they've been trained for 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. This is good. I'm doing well. They assume it's good. Like I'm showing right now, this image with my hand and my thumb is an insult outside of North America in some countries. So you're not allowed to do this. It's almost the same thing as giving somebody a finger. So you know something is good. It doesn't mean the other person knows things are good. Check, check, check. We go back to our two main lessons we're teaching in class. Make sure your language, what you're saying, is understood. Make sure it's like translated okay, but then make sure that translation of your intention is understood. Many times we will see some words can be translated, but the meaning is completely wrong. So do those two things. Can you guys summarize those two things? How about Kavanjani? Can you summarize or tell me what are those two rules again for cross-cultural communication? Two rules?
Using customer's language.
Using customer language, that's the best way to be successful. Yes, but you could still have a mistake because you believe something, maybe they believe something else. So again, there's two rules that I'm trying to teach in class. What are those two rules? How about Imingyu or Arfin? What we're talking about here is this rule number one? Arfin, can you read this?
So main class lesson, respect others and go beyond ethnocentric, believe that your message is good and clear.
Great.
And
Kim Gunjung, can you read the next, number two? Just a sec, I'll get it shown up on screen.
You are understood and how your message can be clarified for the values of others.
Can you explain, what am I talking about? How is this different than number one?
So that I think this is related to the last class about what you said, the intention, understanding the intention of myself and others.
Right, so many people, even our classmates, misunderstand it though. Why do they misunderstand? Why do so many people assume other people understand what I'm saying? Anybody presenting, they usually assume anybody that's in the audience, if they're going like this, they understand. And the message is clear, there's no problems. But that's not true. And it's related to the intention. What does that mean? Can you explain, Kim Banjang?
Can you like
talking about meaning, we're talking about an intention, but I've said it many times in class, and one of the last classes, students were presenting, and I reminded them of the two rules, and they still stood up here, presented 10 slides, 20 slides, bam, 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 bam. They didn't stop until the end. Then they said, any questions, no questions. They sat down. They thought it was good. What are we misunderstanding there? What is a potential problem with that communication?
Oh, if the audience is not asking questions, that means they're not paying attention or they don't understand.
Right. A lot of people are afraid to ask questions, even if they have many in their head. Maybe they want to ask questions, but they're taught they're not supposed to. And so when you assume people don't ask questions, you think it's okay, that's wrong. It's only your belief. That is ethnocentric. Don't be ethnocentric. Before we move on, what are some other words that are always related to ethnocentric? When we're talking about your understanding of cross-cultural communication, you're not born ethnocentric. How are you born? Is that Solmin Kim? How are you born? What is your cultural referencing or your mindset when you were born? Starts with
I believe when you're born, you have like zero mindset. You don't have perspective, belief, nothing. It builds up while you grow up in a society with belief.
Okay, what is the very first idea when you are only learning one thing? What's that called? Anybody in class? Starts with a P, P-A-R, P-A-R-O. Somebody help me out. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna cry. Parochial. Everybody is born parochial. You only know one way. You don't even know there's other cultures. After you get more education, then you learn there are other ways, but most people still don't learn enough about them to understand and appreciate them. So they still think my way is still good. I try to be respectful for me. They should be happy about how I'm doing things. I communicate for my presentation. I think I did a good job. They should clap. That is ethnocentric. You are only appreciating one culture, even though you know there are others. How many people have traveled to other countries? In our class, probably a lot. But I have a question for you. How long do you have to stay in some other culture before you actually appreciate the other culture's values? Because tourists may be different. How about anybody? What about Zhang Minjin? Can you tell me where was the last place you toured?
It was Jeju, I think.
And I assume you're not from Jeju. Did you actually notice the culture of people in Jeju are slightly different than your culture? Even country?
Yeah. Actually, I met like few Jeju person, like most of them are tourists, so I'm not sure. If I have to say foreign country, then maybe France. They
And how long did you stay in France?
3 days.
Did you say 3 days? Is that what I heard?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Did that give you enough time to understand French culture?
No, I believe not.
Okay, I believe, is there anybody from France?
Yes.
Quiz your classmate. You're both interested in the same thing. You're both studying the same class. You're both about the same age. You've spent several months in the same classroom together. Would you like to give him maybe some challenging quiz to check how much does he understand of French culture?
Yeah, I can do that, I think.
Okay.
But how Minjing Chong, how do you say hello to girls and to guys in France? Do you know?
Bonjour, salut.
Oh, like
Hello.
yeah. That's the word, but there's an action with it. You have to do something like
Bijou.
yes.
Yes.
For the girls, you have to do that, and for the men, you have to shake hands. Or if it's someone close to you, you have to kiss him.
Oh, I see that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one question.
Challenging question. Does
Yeah, I'm searching.
know, is there a different way to write a resume in France? Is writing a resume in France different than writing a resume in Korea or in USA? Do university students in France generally think a resume or a CV is one style? And people in USA, do they think it's different? How's that?
I have idea. In Korea, like most of people add photos for the resume, but I heard that maybe in Europe or United States, they don't add photos of them.
That's one very interesting thing. Yes, the idea of photos. Is one right, one wrong? What do you prefer? Solman Kim, what do you prefer? Do you like seeing a photo on a resume? What is good about it? What is bad about it?
Well, I think it's pretty I'm kind of neutral, but I think adding a photo might give stereotype or be prejudice. Without seeing a photo and looking at the resume is better, I think.
So you think it's better not to have that photo? Okay.
Professor, I agree with Herman that like adding my photo is better to not adding. And I have a question to class, just a curiosity. In Korea, in the resume, it's a common question that like asking your like family environment, home environment. How have you been grown up in your family? Is it also common in the resume in other countries?
So if I understand correctly, you're asking the class, should you write about your family and how you grew up in your resume? Should you write that outside of Korea?
Yeah, yes.
What about
that?
Sure.
Well, I'm American, and in America, we don't do like talk about our families or anything in our resume. For us, when you have a resume, it's strictly about like your business experience and past jobs and things that you've had, or just different work experiences in general. You don't really talk about anything else besides that.
Oh, thank you.
That's from Uzbekistan, and in our country the same. We usually not talk about our family in the resume, but we can put like married or unmarried. That's it.
Okay. Any other cultures? We've heard of Uzbekistan. We've heard about United States. What about France or Korea?
For the resume in France, I think this is pretty much the same as North America, according to what Semaj said. But yeah, that's basically the same thing. We don't we don't put information about our family or in what environment we grew up. So yeah, it's kind of the same thing.
And in Korea, I personally never asked a family a culture or like who is my grandfather, but one of my friend have asked his grandfather's name, even his grandfather's name. I don't understand why they ask them.
Good. I have big companies where the executives ask many new people applying to work for the organization. The main question was, where exactly are you living now? They wanted to know not just the city, but the neighborhood, because the neighborhood, he believed, represented quite a lot of details and characteristics that were important about you. So yes, each person has different thoughts and feelings about that. Did I hear somebody else wanting to add something?
Yes, it was me, I think. Because in Korea a few days ago, I got a job, and in their resume, one of the mandatory questions was that, like, what kind of parents I grew up with and what things have greatly influenced me during my growing up, related with like family affairs and how it has changed me. Yeah, so I wondering just in other cultures that question is also common.
No, not in every other culture. Great, let's start taking a look at that. So there's lots of mistakes you can make. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but there are things that you should do in some areas that you should not do in other areas. So typical types of errors, let's just take a look at basic English errors. The idea of you use the wrong word. Some words have different meanings. Like, for example, we based this conclusion on our research. Just a small spelling mistake, using a different word that sounds the same, just spelled differently. It is very popular with me right now because I use AI and my computer software to dictate what I say. And the computer doesn't recognize if I'm talking about this based or this based. And when you send the note with the wrong spelling, it could have big meaning. So make sure you're aware of that. Another one, thank you for your patience versus thank you for your patience. This is people that are sick and dying in hospitals versus this is your ability to wait and not be in a hurry. So the idea, our office will be closed this holy day. So there's several different examples of words that can be a communication problem. Here's more. Results will be worth the wait. Talking about the scale, the number of kilograms, the number of pounds versus the time. Since you plan to visit an aunt, like your mother's sister, your brother's sister, versus an insect in a different country, according to the census versus the survey of people. So there's many words that can be a mistake. I think that's pretty obvious. There's syntax errors in the order of the words. That is possibly more popular and harder to identify for people from a different culture. Native speakers often will discover this before the spelling mistake we talked about in the last 2 or 3 slides. So in Spanish, for example, that whole idea of a noun is given first is different than in English. That idea of Paseo del Rio versus I went for a river walk. There are differences depending on where you are. So bottom line, know your reader, know your customer, know the person you're trying to communicate with. Do not assume what you know is good. Quite possibly what you think is good could be bad. So try to check stereotypes, try to check that what you're saying is okay and appreciated. Don't just assume everything's okay. So in spite of all of the trade, international trade between the United States and the Far East, Americans still don't even communicate properly, and Canadians are the same way. We use a very different type of communication, even if we're using English. The idea of our customs and business practices are different in our head. For example, consider the most popular words in the English language, you or I. Those words are the most popular. But in East Asia, they're sometimes considered bad. You're not supposed to be focused on you. You're not supposed to identify one specific person. What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to be group oriented. Talk about the group. You don't walk up to a person in a school and just talk about that individual person. You're talking about their group or their company, even their province or their state where they're from. For example, US people, Canadian people also, we try to personalize things. We think it's polite and we say the you approach in some. So we're talking about how are you? Can you tell me about you? We're negotiating your contract, and do you think it's okay? Or I like your contract. That can be considered in some ways bad because you're supposed to be associating that person with that company, not just that one individual. So in some other countries, like Japan, for example, people do not like this personal touch. They believe that the writer should refer to the company. Would your company be interested in this plan? Not would you be interested in this plan? So clarify also the meaning of words with more than one meaning. Many cultures have several different meanings for terms or words. Adapt the tone to the reader, to that person. If the cultural background is known, use the unconditional apologies if that is expected in the reader's culture. Try to capture the flavor of the language when writing to someone else whose cultural background you know. So, examples. In Japan, when you're writing, it changes by the time of year. Does any other culture change their writing based off of the month of the year? For example, in March, in the spring has just begun. That's what we usually start to talk about in Japan. But the cold winds of winter are still with us. Also in Japan, they say it's polite to say in June that the rice paddy fields are ready to be planted. We do not say this in Canada. We do not say this in the United States. It's completely different. And in August, Indian summer is still around this week, or in November, the tree on the boulevard is bare of leaves. There is a sense of small talk. It could be polite in Canada and USA to have small talk. Hi, I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a good holiday last week, last month, whatever it is. But I don't know examples of when you start letters very differently. You could talk about the weather, that's one thing, but let's take a look at it. What about an email? In email, they use a memorandum format, no inside address. So observe the proper email courtesy, including the addressing the receiver by the name in the opening sentence. In your introductory email, include phrases such as hello in the customer's language. Trying to connect with the other person, trying to connect with their culture, their language is almost always a good thing. However, in my experience, there are some places, if you do show you understand part of the language, sometimes you will get different treatment. Usually it's a good treatment. Sometimes you, depending on where you are, it could be a harder treatment. So looking at these emails, let's try to bring this up on the screen so everybody can see it. It's a little bit bigger. I will read these emails to you just to make sure you guys see it. Let me. Trying to. Looks like you might not be able to see it, so just a second. Can you guys see these letters okay?
Yes, I
Yes,
see.
sir.
See everything okay? Okay, great. So the idea of the first letter over here, it says, yo, how's it going? Don't forget about our class tonight. We'll chat about a bunch of stuff related to business emails, and I'll get it to you with some other work to do. Give me a shout if you have any questions. See you soon, Sean. Obviously, that is a one type of email that you may be familiar with, or a text that you're familiar with. This other style, you will notice obvious differences, but I want you to point out how is it possibly different than the first one. And there's probably one trick that you might not pick up on. So how is this different? The idea for a cross-cultural communication class today. Dear all, I'm writing to remind you about our online class tonight. Please note that tonight's topic is business emails. We'll be covering the following topics: appropriate usage, formal versus informal, email structure, referencing properly. We will also do a number of activities where you'll be asked to apply what you have learned. If you have any questions, please let me know. I look forward to seeing you all this evening. Regards, John Watts and the teaching team. International Management Professor S. Watts, PhD, MBA, Cambridge University, blah, blah, blah. So, any comments? How is this different? Where is it?
There are actually so many differences. For example, the subject, the title of the email on the first one, it says today, and it's not like detailed. But on the second one, it's giving the information about the main topic of the email, the subject, and in the main text, in the main body, it is the second one has a lot of information about the topic or what's the reason for this email to be sent, and at the end you're giving the information of the sending person, the contact information, and who that person is. But on the other hand, on the first one, you don't even know who is sending an email, or you don't know who's that person is. So I think that's the main difference.
Try to take a guess. Who is sending this and who are they sending it to? And who is this person and who are they sending it to? Try to describe this person. Are they
I think on the first one, it looks like they're sending it to their group mates or classmates. But on the second one, it looks like they're sending it to professor, or professors sending it to students.
Okay, great. Can I get somebody else? How about Kyungganjung? How would you like a challenge? Would you like a challenge? Can you identify a little bit more about this email? Is it a regular email from a certain country? Yes or no? What do you think?
A certain country, I think yes.
Okay.
But countries from like Canada, US, or South Korea, their emails would look like this, but more like some other Asian countries tend to send the left one, I think. I'm not sure with it.
You're thinking some places.
What do you mean in other countries? Like, how do they send email?
Can we get other? Thank you. We're getting closer, but I think it's still not exactly identified the cultural differences in the person. The person sending it could make kind of mistakes that some people in some countries might feel strange about. What would make you feel strange? Is this Canadian email? No. Is it American? How about Samaj? Do you think this is an American style?
Actually, yes, because most of my professors, at least back home at my home universities, would send me emails like this.
Are you sure? Look closer.
Let me see.
Forget this. Look down here. I don't think your professors in North America sign it like this.
Actually, they do. They put their name, except for the Sean Watson, the teaching team. They just say their name, but they would still list their information, like their degree and what department they're working for.
Is this and the teaching team?
Yeah, they don't do the teaching team. They would just say their name.
Right. In North America, it's the individual person sending it. And if I sent this to a North American, some very high North Americans would feel strange. What the heck do they mean, the teaching team? Is this from him or not? They want to know who they're supposed to really talk to. So it might make some Canadians uncomfortable, even though I'm trying to show respect. I'm trying to show it's part of the university. It's part of a teaching group of people. That whole idea of at the bottom, oh, can't really show it, but if we saw the bottom of the email, it shows teaching team's identity and context, but it's not used in most Western countries. So just small details. Sometimes you think you're just focused on a certain area, but and especially at a higher level, some people notice different details and more details. So just be aware of that. Does everybody understand? This side is more for friends or classmates or very close people that are not a professional type of relationship. And this is supposed to be for a professional relationship, but it's not a Korean style. It's not a Canadian style or American style. The cross-cultural communications, depending on where you are and your background, your values change and your communication details also change. So what is an international email? You're supposed to be positive, cheerful, honest, avoid humor. However, in Canada, you can use jokes. United States, you can use jokes, sometimes even picture jokes, funny picture type jokes. However, even in Australia, some people say they have the exact same culture, but in Australia, usually there are more barbs, usually they're more sharp, usually sometimes they're kind of hurtful to some people. You're picking on somebody, maybe with sarcasm. So it does change depending on where you are. Avoid dwelling on the cultural differences. Usually a business person, research shows you get more respect if you get to the point, usually faster, or you're talking to some aspect related to them. In East Asia, you have to talk about the relationship. You have to talk about different things beforehand, but talk about things that relate to that person and you, developing that relationship, not off topic about sports games, things like that. Use short, simple sentences, avoid abbreviations, contractions, possessives, slang, jargon, idioms. Let's go through and see a few of these details. For example, do not ask questions starting with the word why, because in some cultures, that would really confuse people. Why? Why could it confuse people or make a problem if you're simply asking why? Why do you have that contract? What, why don't we try another one? How could that lower your position in the relationship? Any ideas? Samaj, do you understand?
Yes, I'm sorry. 1 second. I had to fix something with my laptop. Can you repeat that one more time?
The idea of, in some cultures, internationally, you should not ask questions starting with why. Such questions sometimes require that the readers defend their position. That's one aspect. But there's another aspect. Many cultures, usually their response to questions could differ depending on where you are. Some countries like questions, some countries don't like questions. So why could a question with why create a problem with a business partner? You have an American person negotiating with somebody in Asia or Korea or China. If you have several why questions in it, that number one, it might make them feel like you're attacking them. That's number one. But what is another problem? Can anybody think of that?
It kind of be like you're not, I don't know, kind of like insulting in a way if you're asking too many why questions. Like, I don't know how to explain it.
Let's take a look. Are there any more?
Can I try? I think in email communication, if you ask basic question like why, how, what can I do, it seems like you didn't do any research and you just asking basic question and you're wasting people's time. So I think that should be avoided.
That's one aspect of it, yes. The more you research about the other organization, the better. The book talks quite a bit about that. But what I was talking about is the whole idea that some cultures like Scandinavia, they're very flat. Any information is allowed to be shared with anybody. You can ask any questions. North America is fairly similar. You can generally ask any questions. But in other cultures, not only are they hierarchical, but they're centralized with information. Some people at the top have the information. Other people don't. If you're asking questions to people, trying to pull the information down, that could, number one, make them look bad if they don't have the answer. And number two, it makes you kind of look like you're above them, asking questions of them. So just based off of the culture, the idea of any question could make the other person uncomfortable, for example, with the hierarchy or with centralization of information. Great. Next, be generous with compliments. Usually that in the United States and in Canada, a lot of people will exaggerate quite a bit. You look so great. That's the best outfit I've ever seen you in. That type of thing, they're very generous with. But many cultures, they will feel like not only are you acting strange, but if you are lying, if it's not the best, they will think you are a liar or you're not sincere. So that whole idea, even these instructions can be misunderstood in different cultures. Next, do not express anger. Usually, there's a lot of cultures that don't like you losing face with somebody else. You're not supposed to make somebody in Korea have their image harmed or their reputation impacted. Otherwise, you could go to jail with defamation. But also, you're not supposed to like raise your arm, even if you don't touch them, but pretending to touch them could also be illegal in some areas. But with email, just expressing anger may make some people in some cultures very unhappy. If you make a mistake, apologize. However, even this, when it says you're supposed to apologize, did you realize that even in Korea and in Japan, traditionally, people were not supposed to apologize when you bump into somebody? It is kind of disrespectful to do that. Why? Traditionally, if you hit somebody, if you're reading your notes and you hit somebody walking on the street, that is a mistake. That is bad. You were bad. But the other person also hit you. It's kind of bad for them. So you have one bad problem. You actually hit them. However, turning around and saying sorry about that, you're reminding them and maybe reminding and telling other people they also had a problem. So they're losing face a second time. That is some of what the research says is why apologies aren't as popular in some cultures as other cultures. For example, in Canada, they'll apologize for anything, even if it's not their problem. So make sure you're aware of these details. The more you know about the cultures you're dealing with, the better. So there's an activity. I'd like to get you guys, put you guys in the groups, and there's 4 different points here, but I'd like you guys to think about maybe all of them in your partners, but try to focus on number 1. What the challenge here is to work with another partner and maybe draft a short email to somebody. And there's 4 different topics. You can write about this, number 1, 2, 3, or 4. Number 1 is in your email, teach somebody specific how to write a resume to a specific job. As we started the class, does the resume change depending on where you're from? So you should identify specifically who the letters to, what is the company they're with, where is the company, which country they're in, and what words should be used. Try to think about that. Next, if you're interested, there's extra information. All of you guys have this file. This file is the week 13 file in the class outline. Again, there's extra information here. The second option is respond to a complaint from a customer about a new but damaged MacBook or iPhone or some business product from a company. Next, number 3, you can negotiate the price of a logistic service or invite some big company to a informal meeting, but it's for business purposes. So for example, you invite this hotel, 4 Points Sheraton Hotel Resort, invite them to a collaboration for an event. That person, for example, is supposed to be focused on corporate partnering. So I'm going to put you guys into groups. Make sure you know these 4 different things. And if you can do all 4, great. If you just want to pick one, that's okay. Afterwards, share this with the class. Any questions? Going once?
No,
Question?
it's clear. Thank
Great.
you.
So I'm going to put you guys in the groups. Let's make it 6. There's going to be hopefully about 3 participants in general each. You guys can talk together about how you can make this and try to explain why are you making this email this way. Should not be long, should not be difficult, but try to understand why are you writing it, why are you using those words, who exactly is it going to, and why are those words different than some other words. I will join your groups soon. Good luck.
Professor, I'm sorry, but no one is entering to room 3. So I just got out.
Can you join again? Room 3 should have Jun Minjun and Moon Tae-kun, I guess.
Here I see them. 2 of them is here. I entered room 3, but no one was
Jun
entering.
Minjun or Moon Tae-kun? Do you hear us?
I think they are not here now.
I will move you to room number 2. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
All right. Do you see the notification yet?
So, hello again. Since we only have about 5 minutes left, can we get just a very quick demonstration from each participant? Anybody want to volunteer to start? Ulugbeck, are you looking confident? Are you ready to share what your group had?
Yes.
Great.
We have talked about first section, how to write resume.
Okay.
And now I got some Korean style of resume that in Korea usually men should write their military service also. Sometimes they may ask also religion. If company requires, we have to write our religion also. And we need to show our skills and certificates that can prove our results, maybe.
Good. Any other details? Like you have results in almost all countries, don't you?
Yes.
So what is a specific difference in Korea compared to some other country?
For example, compared to my country, as we already mentioned, in Korea, people also should write their family background sometimes, but in my country, we only say, for example, single or married. That's enough.
Okay, next group. Anything you'd like to add? How about group one? What were some of the details you guys had?
We didn't have too much time to discuss, but we were discussing how, for example, in Finland, at least, you would use a picture for your CV. Yeah, we were discussing the resume part as well. How you would use a picture for your CV and how you would not mention like your marital status or nationality or anything like that. You would leave those out in Finland and in the UK as well. And in the UK, you don't use a picture in your resume. And how, for example, in America, you have to put nationality down, I guess, or like resident status and things like that.
Thanks. Anybody else want to volunteer the details, or you can alternatively post these details in the class Facebook? Anybody want to talk about them in class rather than post on the Facebook?
Well, I can say some things for our group. We were talking about kind of like how, I think it was Minjong, that's her name, how she mentioned earlier, like how in Korea it's kind of common, not really common, but she had to talk about her family and list their names in like residential areas in her resume and her cover letter. And we were kind of comparing it to how in America, like we don't do that. We don't put pictures on our resumes for some reasons, because discrimination, whether it be discrimination or racial discrimination, how we just kind of keep everything not really anonymous, but it's really just like your name and your information is based off of how you get the job, more so than it is like other outside factors.
Great. What about the length of a resume? Are there differences in the lengths that are appropriate from one country to another? Any ideas about that?
I don't know about other countries, but I believe, if I remember correctly, in the States, we do not have them that long. No one takes the time to read an extremely long resume.
Okay, good. Any other group wants to share details, or you want to just post it to Facebook? Going once, twice. Okay, I'm going to show a few details here. So as we see here, this shows in the United States, a resume quite often is 1 or 2 pages, especially for students or less experienced applicants, and it includes personal information, job objective, educational background. That's what we mean by personal information. Work experience, references, personal information, and a cover letter. So by personal information, it's personal, but only professional. You're not really talking about dating details at all, right? You usually cannot talk about age, religion, gender, marital status, or a photo. Some places you will be disqualified if you do talk about those. In Canada, for example, if you have a photo, your application is deleted automatically. And if, in addition to a photo, if you have your home address, you may be disqualified automatically. Versus in resumes, some people say in Germany, 20 to 30 page resumes are popular. They will have copies of diplomas, photos, employment verification, names of parents, family, religious affiliation, financial obligations, and professional activities. In France, they say a resume should include a cover letter, photograph, family information, age, hobbies, foreign language expertise, and age discrimination, they say, is common and legal. In the United Kingdom, a resume is, again, just 1 or 2 pages, and it excludes, does not include a photo, family information, military service, or any other personal information. Military service, for example, in Korea, is generally a requirement for the guys. In Spain, a resume is usually 2 pages in letter form with a chronology of your experience, military service, education, family info, professions of your parents, clubs, professional objective, and a picture is acceptable. In Brazil, they say the resume should be, again, 1 or 2 pages. It's similar to the US, except that the personal information is also included. It's suggested to also talk about certain skills. So any questions about any of these things? Again, we're just showing that how you communicate with other people, cross-cultural communication, it doesn't matter what you think is good. What matters is you try to appreciate the culture of the other person. So research as much as possible about that other person and do it in their way. I, for example, am Canadian, but I've done so much international work because it's a requirement for many places to have my picture on my CV in Korea, that when I have given my resume to other places in Canada, I've been disqualified. So your culture, even though I'm Canadian, my Canadian culture is not regular Canadian. I'm called a third culture child. Make sure you understand not only the country, but the specific person or organization you're applying to and write for that person's values. Check details as much as possible. Class is finished. Thank you for participating. We'll talk more about this next class. Hopefully you guys can share some more details about this in Facebook, and please share your projects, whether it's finished or not, share it in Facebook and start giving comments to other people. Help them see other cultural understandings could change things. Any last questions?
Thank you, Professor.
Okay. Ali Akbar, anything I can help you with?
Thanks, Professor.
No? Samaj, you're good?
Yes, everything's good.
You're going to be posting your file into Facebook in the next few minutes, right, Samaj? Right, yes, sir?
Let's say this week. How about that?
You are doing the American student style of culture, waiting for something perfect, but it's not the technology style. Being able to collaborate with others while developing it, you could get other people to give you suggestions. Like me, I want to help, but I can't see it.
Okay. Bye, thank you.
Thank you, Professor.